It's pretty common knowledge among baseball fans that prior to 1947, Major League Baseball was segregated. It's also pretty common knowledge that Jackie Robinson was the first black player to play Major League Baseball in the previously white-only leagues. But what if I told you that neither of those statements are actually true? Yes, it is true that Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier in 1947, but that color barrier didn't always exist. 3 other black players played Major League Baseball before Robinson did, and they debuted over 60 years before him. The first black man to play Major League Baseball was White, as in his name was William Edward White. White was born in 1860, 3 years before Abraham Lincoln declared all enslaved persons to be free with the Emancipation Proclamation. He was the son of a white plantation owner and a half-black woman that his father owned. Typing that sentence feels gross, and reading it out loud feels even worse, but I think it's important to not sugarcoat history. As a result, he was technically born into slavery, according to Georgia law, though the little information that we have seems to suggest that his father treated him like a son rather than a slave. For high school, White's father sent him to a private Quaker school in Providence, Rhode Island. While there, and while still in high school, White played for Brown University's baseball team. He was a standout player for Brown, and when the nearby Providence Grays team of the National League needed a replacement for injured first baseman Joe Start, it was William White that they called on to fill in. White played a single game for the Grays on June 21, 1879. He went 1 for 4 with a run scored. 3 days after making his Major League debut, he graduated high school. White continued to play baseball for Brown throughout the rest of 1879 and 1880, but he never returned to the National League. He was considered one of the best college players around, but he made the choice to not pursue a career in professional baseball. Although White was only 1/4 black, he almost certainly would have been considered a black man in the 1800s, especially since his mother was a slave and he himself was born a slave, according to Georgia law. But when he played for the Grays in 1879, it's unlikely that anyone on the field knew that they were playing with a black man. White was white passing, and self-identified as white on multiple federal and state censuses. White wasn't circumventing any MLB rules by hiding his identity, though. There were no rules preventing black men from playing Major League Baseball, and there were teams willing to sign black players at that time, as evidenced by the other 2 black players that predated Jackie Robinson. 5 years after William White became the first black person and the first formerly enslaved person to play Major League Baseball, Moses Fleetwood Walker, known to most as Fleet, became the first openly and visibly black man to play in the major leagues. After playing amateur baseball in Newcastle, Pennsylvania for a mostly white team that did also have one other black player, Walker was signed to play catcher for the Toledo Blue Stockings in 1883. At the time, the Toledo team played in the Northwestern League, one of the most prominent minor leagues of the 1880s. A representative from the Peoria Reds tried to prevent Walker from being allowed to join the league, but he was unsuccessful. Walker was the Blue Stockings' primary catcher in 1883 and was respected by some for his baseball skills, particularly when it came to his defense behind the plate. Future Hall of Famer Cap Anson was not among that group, however. Anson's Chicago White Stockings of the National League were scheduled to play an exhibition game against the Blue Stockings in Toledo on August 10, 1883. When he arrived, Anson threw a temper tantrum about Walker. I'm going to put a screenshot on the screen from a Sabre article, which contains an excerpt from the August 11, 1883 print of the Toledo Daily Blade. The excerpt includes quotes of the profane and offensive language used by Anson in his protest of Walker. I'm not going to repeat any of the words that Anson used, but as I said before, it's important to not sugarcoat history. Please feel free to either pause and read if you'd like to, or refrain from doing so, whichever you'd prefer. Despite Anson's protests, Toledo management stood up for their player and refused to pull Walker from the lineup, and eventually, Anson gave in and played ball. Unfortunately, as we'll see later on, it did end up being a lost the battle but not the war kind of situation for Anson. The Toledo Blue Stockings would end up winning the Northwestern League pennant in 1883, and they joined the American Association in 1884. The American Association was one of 2 major leagues in the 1880s. Well, technically in 1884 it was one of 3, but I've already talked plenty about that. What this meant, though, is that the Blue Stockings were now a Major League Baseball team, and therefore, Fleet Walker was now a Major League Baseball player. Walker's performance on the field in 1884 was unremarkable. A 106 OPS+, negative 0.1 WAR, and most surprisingly, negative 8 fielding runs behind the plate. That, along with his 72 pass balls and only 42 games played, does not seem to match with his strong defensive reputation. The discrepancy may be explained by examining who was throwing to him during the 1884 season. Tony Mullane, an Irish immigrant, was the primary pitcher for the 1884 Toledo Blue Stockings. Tony Mullane holds the major league record for most career wild pitches. Tony Mullane was also a bigot. He openly disliked black people, and for this reason would intentionally ignore the signs that Walker gave him, forcing Walker to catch fastballs when he was expecting curveballs, and vice versa. Walker eventually gave up on giving Mullane signs at all, and simply had to react to whatever pitch Mullane felt like throwing. It's hard to be a good defensive catcher when the guy on the mound almost every game is the wildest pitcher in MLB history and also won't communicate with you about what pitch is coming. Decades later, Mullane spoke about Walker, saying, quote, "He was the best catcher I ever worked with, but I disliked a Negro." Walker battled with injuries during the 1884 season, a factor that eventually led to his release in September. He never returned to the major leagues. The third black player to play Major League Baseball, and the last to debut until Jackie Robinson, was Fleet Walker's brother Welday. Welday Walker joined Fleet in Toledo in 1884, but he was with the team for less than a month and played in only 5 games. He hit .222 with a 59 OPS plus in those games. Although he did not play with a major league team after 1884, Fleet Walker was not done with baseball. In 1885, he played for Cleveland of the Western League, and a team from Waterbury, Connecticut, which was a part of 3 different leagues that year. He played with the Waterbury team again in 1886, then earned a contract with the Newark Little Giants of the International League for 1887. The International League was a high-level minor league. Not quite on the level of the National League or American Association, but well-known and well-respected. He was the second black player on the Newark team, joining pitcher George Stovey. All of the leagues that Walker played in during his career were primarily made up of white players. He faced a plethora of abuse, but kept his composure and remained determined in his fight for his right to play baseball. And for a while, he was winning, until it was time to face Cap Anson again. On July 14, 1887, Cap Anson and the Chicago White Stockings traveled to Newark for an exhibition game against the Little Giants. Anson once again insisted that he would not play against black players, and unlike Toledo's management, who had stood up for Walker, Newark's management gave in. Both Walker and Stovey, who was supposed to be that game's starting pitcher, were kept out of the game. That very same day, the International League voted to not allow its teams to sign any new contracts with black players. The vote passed 6-4, and unsurprisingly, the 4 teams with black players all voted not to ban them, and the 6 teams without black players all voted to ban them. Although neither of the major leagues officially adopted any policy against their teams signing black players, and neither did most of the minor leagues, the International League's decision in 1887 effectively ended black participation in all predominantly white baseball leagues. 1887 was the beginning of the color barrier that Jackie Robinson would break 60 years later. Walker played 2 more seasons in the International League, now called the International Association, not to be confused with the other International Association of 1877 and 1878. He played for the Syracuse Stars, as he was grandfathered in and was permitted to continue playing in the league. After his final season in 1889, though, no black players remained in any of the high minor leagues. After retiring from baseball, Walker stabbed and killed a guy, was found not guilty of second-degree murder, ended up serving a year in federal prison anyway after he was convicted of mail robbery, got out of prison, managed an opera house, edited a newspaper with his brother Welday, wrote a book, patented an invention for an explosive projectile, patented 3 inventions for changing movie reels, and then died of pneumonia. All of this, of course, after being the first openly black man to play Major League Baseball. What a life. In addition to White and the Walker brothers, there were also many black men that played minor league baseball on predominantly white teams prior to 1887. I've done my best to identify as many of them as possible, and I'm going to list them for you now. Bud Fowler was the first black player to appear in an organized baseball game. He pitched for the Lynn Live Oaks of the International Association in 1878. On May 18th of that year, he pitched a 2-hit shutout against Ross Barnes in his London Tecumsehs. He bounced around and played for various teams throughout his career, including the Stillwater team of the Northwestern League, the Keokuk Hawkeyes of the Western League, the Pueblo team of the Colorado League, the Topeka Capitals of the Western League, and the Binghamton Crickets of the International League. In addition to pitching, Fowler also played second base, and I believe that was actually his primary position later on in his career. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2022 as a Pioneer. George Stovey was a pitcher and outfielder. He played for the Jersey City team in the Eastern League in 1886 at just 20 years old. He went 16-15 that season with a 1.13 ERA and struck out 203 batters in 270 1/3 innings pitched. He played with Fleetwood Walker on the Newark Little Giants of the International League in 1887, and then he bounced around a few lower minor leagues from 1888 to 1891. Frank Grant was the only black player to play 3 consecutive seasons with the same team prior to Jackie Robinson, as he played for the Buffalo Bisons of the International League from 1886 to 1888. Grant was a second baseman and was given the nickname Black Dunlap, a reference to white second baseman Fred Dunlap. Grant was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in 2006 as a pioneer. Robert Higgins was a pitcher and outfielder for the Syracuse Stars of the International League/International Association. He played for Syracuse in 1887 and 1888. Some of Higgins' teammates in Syracuse tried to sabotage Higgins when he pitched by intentionally making errors. In Higgins' first International League game, the Stars lost to the Toronto team 28-8. Of the 28 runs that Higgins allowed, 21 of them were unearned. The Toronto World newspaper said of the game, quote, "Marr, Bittman, and Beard seemed to want the Toronto team to knock Higgins out of the box, and time and again they fielded so badly that the home team were enabled to secure many hits after the side should have been retired. In several instances, these players carried out their plans in the most glaring manner. Fumbles and muffs of easy fly balls were frequent occurrences, but Higgins regained control of his temper and smiled at every move of the click. Marr, Bittman, Beard, and Jansen played like schoolboys." William Renfro played for Binghamton of the International League with Bud Fowler in 1887. He was primarily a pitcher. Randolph Jackson played 4 games at second base for the Oswego Starch Boxes of the International League in 1887. There were also a number of players that only played on all-black teams, but played on black teams that were part of an integrated minor league. For example, the Eastern Interstate League, which was primarily a white league, allowed the Cuban Giants, an all-black team, to join their league for the 1890 season. George Williams, a member of the Cuban Giants, won the 1890 Interstate League batting title. Black teams also played in the Middle States League in 1889 and the Connecticut State League in 1891, as well as a few other low minor leagues for a year or two in the late 1880s and early 1890s. And finally, the Syracuse Stars signed a catcher in 1886 named Dick Mayle, whose name of course means penis man. After his signing, rumors spread that Dick Mayle was actually a black man, and that his real name was Dick Johnson, or Penis. While researching him, I made the mistake of Googling Dick Mayle, and needless to say, I did not get the type of results that I was hoping for. It turns out that Dick's last name actually was Johnson, and that he actually was black. Unfortunately, he never did play a regular season game with the Stars as he was released during the preseason. If there are any other black players that I'm missing that played on white teams in the 1800s, please let me know in the comments. Before we wrap this up, I want to be crystal clear about something. The takeaway from this video should not be that Jackie Robinson doesn't deserve the recognition he gets. That is not at all the point I'm trying to make. Jackie Robinson did break the color barrier. Jackie Robinson did fundamentally change Major League Baseball. The point here is not to discredit him, but rather to correct a misconception, and to give proper recognition to the black baseball players that came before Robinson. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy this type of content, be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any future videos. Alright, that's all I got. See you guys next time.